Thank you very much. I think we should begin our session. We have exactly 1 hour and 10 minutes, and we have 6 panelists. So I intend to give them around, say, 9 minutes. So that means we'll have about 15 minutes for the Q&A session. And before I do so, I'd just to briefly introduce the panelists. To my right, at the extreme most, is Mr. Victor Andres MANHIT. He's the president of Stratbase Albert del Rosario Institute for Strategic and International Studies from the Philippines. Then I have Ms. Kim Hejin, to my right, the head of Information and Data Unit, ASEAN-Korea Centre in Seoul. Then to my left is the distinguished Termsak CHALERMPALANUPAP. He is a visiting fellow, Thailand Studies Program, ISEAS, Singapore. Then I have Carole Ann Chit Tha from Myanmar Institute of Strategic International Studies, which she is a member, formerly a professor of international relations in Yangon University. Next to her is Mr. Somvilay CHANTHAVONG, Deputy Director, International Cooperation Division, Institute of Foreign Affairs of Lao PDR. Then last, Mr. CHO Wondeuk, Research Professor, Center for ASEAN-Indian Studies, KNDA-ROK. So as the MC has just announced, the theme of this third session is enhancing people-centered cooperation and public diplomacy. I think this is one of the most interesting topics of this forum. And before further ado, I would like to give the floor to the first speaker, that is Mr. MANHIT. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon to everyone. And I'd like to extend my thanks, just like my colleague earlier, Renato, to the organizer, Korea National Diplomatic Academy, for organizing this conference. Allow me to share my thoughts on enhancing people-centered cooperation and public diplomacy from a point of view of the Philippine experience. Given the rich history of Korea, there's a sense of familiarity that Filipinos empathize with the Republic of Korea. We both emerged from a colonial past. We fought against a dictatorship and eventually became a democracy. At this point in our history, civil society has always been the driving force that helped create these changes and maintain this order. But beyond history in forms of practices and engagement, people-centered related activities further strengthened the bilateral relation between the Philippines and the Republic of Korea. I myself have been a witness that the recent past 2 decades has totally transformed our relationship, and I will even share a data that has not been shared publicly in terms of the trust level of Filipinos with regards to the Republic of Korea. I think it all starts with the Korean culture wave. You know, human mobility brings with it culture and unavoidable people-to-people exchange. As such, the natural integration of Korean culture due to these trends allowed the normalization of Korean presence in my country, the Philippines. Initially, I saw young people studying English in the Philippines, in some key cities. Then I see some of them even proceeding to take their tertiary education. And I was lucky enough to teach some of them after spending 26 years in the university as a professor, and even hired one of my students who just got married to a Filipino 3 months ago. And they have started a family together. Beyond people exchanges, through tourism and even migration, this Korean culture wave, or the Hallyu wave fever, has exponentially grown stronger with the rise of digitalization. Another one is what we call the soft power that we have experienced in the Philippines. The hansik, or the Korean traditional food. I myself is a supporter, or it's one of my favorites, the point that I missed the dinner in the first night because I looked for Korean food in the area from lunch and dinner time. the K-dramas. We used to be fascinated, being a former Spanish colony, we call it Spanish or Latin American telenovela. Then it became the Taiwanese drama. But I think for the past 2 decades, it's really the K or the Korean drama. Then, of course, the K-pop's popularity in my own country. I always ask my students and even my young staff and colleagues in my institute, do you really understand what they're saying? But they said they just enjoy the beat and they follow the music, and there's a different way of appreciating it. But these are really the strength. And we see it also in the continuing rise of tourism in the Philippines. I think the #1 source of foreign tourist arrivals in the Philippines are South Koreans. No matter if our own president likes to hype his shift to China, no data supports any growth in anything with China relationship. And we have seen that with Korean tourists. We have seen that even with migration of Chinese families setting up small and medium-scale enterprises, some in the economic zones, some in small businesses in key areas of the Philippines. And the Korean presence has led to what I call organic yet sporadic growth of niche communities with existing Filipino communities. In some cities, we now have what we call Korean towns have naturally emerged due to the growing presence of Korean culture. The business culture is also seen to flourish given that the Philippines, the past 2 administrations, and we just got the report from the World Bank this week that we have improved again on the ease of doing business. And there are a lot of changes in our law with regards to foreign investments. So hopefully it can really encourage greater investments from South Korea that we have seen this past few years. Public diplomacy has been a crucial pillar, I believe, in strengthening the relation of South Korea, not only in the Philippines, but in ASEAN, the region. It has contributed greatly to strengthening the trust and confidence each ASEAN nation has with South Korea. So this last quarter, exactly the last 2 weeks of September, I asked the partner polling institute of my institute, Stratbase ADR Institute. Our partner is called Pulse Asia Polling Institute. It's the most popular polling and respected polling institute in the Philippines, whereby we normally rate awareness and trust level of countries that has a relationship with the Philippines. And for the first time, I asked them to include South Korea, and we got a rating of 60% trust rating. So that means 6 out of 10 Filipinos trust Korea, the people of Korea, and the nation of Republic of Korea, with 33% with little trust. But that is something that you need to build on. That's an opportunity. As compared to China, which is 75% distrusted by Filipinos. To show that at times, beyond the news that you read about my country, there are different numbers to show you the real feeling of the Filipino people. The positive outlook of the Republic of Korea-ASEAN relations secures the various opportunities for sustained growth and development across different sectors. The diversity of the Southeast Asian region and the openness of the Republic of Korea to multicultural further solidifies this productive cooperation. I heard it mentioned by the earlier panel, the middle power or the middle power strategy, I believe is necessary in the field of public diplomacy to make regional cooperation rooted in shared values of a rules-based international order, committed to progressive development and united in interests, as something that can bind us together. I'd like to end with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. MANHIT. You had described the similar features in the history of your country and South Korea, and also emphasized on the cultural aspect of Korea, like the food, K-pop, K-dance, etc., and also immigration of Koreans to Philippines and the rise of Korean towns. And also tourism, which is very important and rising in the Philippines. Even in my country, we have given visa-free to the Koreans, and we have seen increase of 85% increase from tourists from Korea coming to my country. So this is a very important point. Then I also agree with you that public diplomacy is a diplomatic tool that can win the hearts and minds of people in foreign countries. Thank you very much, Mr. MANHIT. The second speaker is Kim Hejin, and you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let me first join my fellow panelists in thanking the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the KNDA for organizing today's strategic dialogue. I hope this is the beginning of a regular meeting of our think tanks in the future. I want to first start off with well, Professor Cheong-gi mentioned in the previous session that the New Southern Policy is more than just the 3 pillars, but let me just go back to the 3 pillars and talk about the people pillar. So you already now are well aware that the 3 pillars make up the New Southern Policy. It's the people, prosperity, and peace. And there is, in fact, a particular emphasis on people. I want to read you an excerpt from the address by President Moon at the Business Forum back in November 2017 in Jakarta, where he unveiled the New Southern Policy. He said, and I quote, "The Korean-ASEAN relationship used to be centered on trade of goods, but I want to expand it to the exchange of technologies, culture, arts, and people." So the reason for this unprecedented importance on people, I think, comes from the understanding that only with the understanding, the support, and the actual participation of the peoples of the 2 regions can we pursue a strong, genuine, and sustainable partnership with ASEAN. So in this sense, there is a need to balance out this excessive focus on the economic aspect. I'm not arguing that we should stop economic cooperation. It should be there, but I think there should be also bold investments made for cultural and academic and people-to-people exchanges. So again, we need to build a more comprehensive, multifaceted partnership that takes root at the people level because, you know, while in the beginning, the government and the state can initiate and we can support programs, but for them to be sustainable, it really has to take root among the peoples. So this is not to say, however, that there hasn't been any progress over the 30 years. So we're not starting from zero base at all. The number of mutual visits have made a steady increase. For the last 3 or 4 years, I think we had about a 14% increase every year. So now we've reached over 11 million last year of the number of mutual visits. We are, I think, well on our way towards the 50 million. The New Southern Policy currently targets 50 million by 2020 of mutual visits. So I think we're well on our way. And as a lot of people have already mentioned, ASEAN is one of the most visited areas by Koreans. And also, what's encouraging is that it's not just the traveling, but we have increasing number of ASEAN students studying in Korea. I'll give you some numbers. In Korea, it's increased 4-fold in the past 5 years. We now have 51,000 ASEAN students studying in Korea. Now, there's a caveat here because among them, 90% are from Vietnam. We have 46,000 from Vietnam. So, you know, there is this, it shows the fast-growing relationship between Korea and Vietnam, but then it's really overly concentrated in one country. So we need to have more students from other countries in ASEAN coming to Korea. Along with the number of students, the number of long-term residents is also increasing on both sides. We have almost 600,000 ASEAN peoples residing in Korea and 300,000 Koreans in ASEAN. They're contributing to their respective communities. For example, the workers from Southeast Asia make up about 34% of all ASEAN residents here in Korea. They're employed in areas like construction, manufacturing, agriculture, fisheries. You know, where there is much shortage in young workforce in Korea because of the unpopularity of manual labor in one. Another is the fast dropping birth rates in Korea. So there needs to be more appreciation of the contribution that the ASEAN workers are doing here in Korea. On the culture and tourism area, collaboration has definitely expanded. As Victor just mentioned, Korean pop culture, Hallyu, is widely loved by ASEAN region, and it's become an inseparable part of the TV entertainment for every household there, I believe. In Korea also, together with tourism, Southeast Asian cuisine has gained unprecedented level of popularity. As of June last year, so that's 2018, there were 1,168 ASEAN restaurants in Korea. That's mostly Vietnamese and Thai restaurants, but I still think that the food is what is really spearheading what we call the ASEAN wave here in Korea. So there's, every reason for us to be very optimistic of the future of our socio-cultural exchanges. But again, this does not mean that there's no work to be done. I mean, in order for this not to be a one-time phenomena, but for us to actually sustain it into the future, we definitely need to put more effort in there. And what kind of efforts do we need to put in? Today I want to focus on 3 areas. One is better awareness, improved perceptions. Basically, for Koreans, we really need to move beyond the traveling and beyond the food of ASEAN. We really need to have a deeper understanding of what ASEAN is all about. And also for the ASEAN side, for the Southeast Asians, I think you also need to move beyond the K-pop and the K-drama. As much as it's good, I think we need to go a little bit further than that and have a deeper understanding of what we are all about deep inside, right, for both of us. Secondly, we need to encourage more two-way exchanges. For any relationship, whether it's a relationship between countries or between people, everything has to be two-way. If it's one-sided, it'll not be sustained for a long time. So in order to sustain the partnerships, we really need to promote two-way exchanges. Now, two-way exchanges can only flourish when both sides gain interest and craving for the other's cultural content. And we had a student earlier who said he's frankly not really interested in ASEAN. I think our homework is that ASEAN also needs to develop cultural content that will interest the Korean public, just like K-pop is giving interest to the the ASEAN people have interest in K-pop. So I think this is one area that the two sides can cooperate more in the future. So the Korean side can work with the ASEAN side on developing cultural content that can sow the seeds for an ASEAN wave here in Korea. And finally, you might think this a little bit strange, but for me, I think we need to instill a more sense of ASEAN among the ASEAN communities and peoples. Because, I'm sure you'll all agree, the concept of ASEAN is a very government-led concept. And ASEAN itself, it's a name for a regional organization. So while the ASEAN community was launched back in 2015, it's not like the EU where suddenly all the people of ASEAN identify themselves as the ASEAN citizens. So, while the ASEAN socio-cultural community is working to instill this sense of ASEAN-ness among the peoples of ASEAN, I think more work needs to be done in this regard. Why do I say this? Because for dialogue partners, for countries like Korea, as much as bilateral cooperation is important for individual countries of Southeast Asia, partnership with ASEAN as a whole is what is very attractive. Because when you come together as an ASEAN, you get that comparative advantage. You get the cumulative GDP of $3 trillion. You get the 600 million population. So you get that number of Korea's second largest trading partner. So we want to cooperate with ASEAN as a whole, and I think ASEAN also has to come as an ASEAN as a whole in that regard. So how do we address these challenges? That's where you all come in, because think tanks, both as research institutes and opinion leaders, need to have more interest in ASEAN-Korea partnership, I believe. We need more studies in this area, more articles, more journals, more presentations, more forums like this where, thinkers, visionaries, scholars come together, discuss these issues together, and not only discuss these issues amongst ourselves, but to go out to schools and businesses and governments to reach out, local governments, to reach out and explain the importance of our partnership into the future. And I think through these efforts, we need to build up a community of scholars, entrepreneurs, analysts, artists, professionals who really focus on the ASEAN region. Currently, there are, professionals in Korea who are focusing on ASEAN, but it's not. I think it's still a small community. I think we need a larger community of scholars who really focus on ASEAN, and I also think we need a younger generation, and we need to nurture a younger generation of ASEAN scholars. But if you want to nurture ASEAN scholars, you need to have some incentive. So, these people who study ASEAN need to be able to earn a living when they grow up, and you need jobs for them. So I think that's the kind of work that we need to do. The same goes for the ASEAN professionals focusing on Korean studies. So nowadays, many are beginning to learn Korean in ASEAN countries to work in Korean companies, which is a good sign. But I think there is still a small number of graduate level professionals in ASEAN who can teach about Korea. I believe there is not that many number of graduate level studies offered in ASEAN universities specifically on Korea. So that's somewhere that we also need to focus a little bit more in the future. In addition to the think tanks and the schools, I believe the media needs to play a greater role. We have some media here today, but we need more coverage in the media of ASEAN-Korea partnership in all areas. In order for the media to cover more about ASEAN-Korea partnership, it's not just about having more interesting stories on ASEAN and Korea, but we really need to educate the journalists as well. They have to know more about ASEAN in order to write more about ASEAN. So currently there are already many platforms, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Culture and Sports and Tourism, individual press companies have media invitation programs. Just a couple of days ago, I was at the Korea Press Foundation, and they also have something called Kwanun Press Fellowship. And I was surprised to find out that 80% of the participating journalists were from ASEAN. So, this is a 1-month training program where they come to learn about Korea. I think these are all very good platforms, and it gives an encouraging sign for our future together. Schools, one of our panelists mentioned earlier today, I think it was Professor Kim Young-jun who said that ASEAN receives very little attention in our school curriculum, like in middle school and high school curriculum in Korea. The same goes for the textbooks in Southeast Asia. I think precious little is covered about Korea compared to Japan and China. This is something that we can work on more. Of course, I'm not going to argue that, okay, let's all now go back home and incorporate ASEAN studies or Korean studies in our school curriculum, because I know it takes time and it's a very painstaking effort to put Korean studies or Korean history or ASEAN history into our curriculum in our high schools and our middle schools. It's a time-taking process. But we need to be aware that this is a necessary effort. And while these efforts are being made in education cooperation, there are other mediums that can be put into use to raise awareness. And I want to introduce a program offered by my center, the ASEAN-Korea Centre. Our program is called the Kumgil Project. It's actually registered. It's a school tour program. It's officially registered with the Ministry of Education in Korea. It's as part of the Kumgil Project. Kumgil Project is like it's a project to help students learn about different professions in Korea. So it's one of the part of the curriculum of the middle and high schools in Korea. And currently, many schools, in fact, make use of our school tour program, and we have about 40 to 60 school visits every year that come to the ASEAN-Korea Centre. And these are middle school and high school students that know nothing about ASEAN. They come and learn about ASEAN, and they gain an interest. And I think it's a very unique program, and it's a very good way to reach out. And one of the good signs was this year, we actually even had a school from Indonesia visit the ASEAN-Korea Centre for this school tour program. And they came all the way. It was part of their school trip, all the way from Jakarta to Korea, to the center to learn about ASEAN and Korea. So in addition to our center, I believe the ASEAN Culture House in Busan, which opened in 2017, is also making many efforts to reach out to the youth and the general public. Similar programs can also be incorporated at the Asia Culture Center in Gwangju. They recently had a ministerial meeting between ASEAN and Korea in Gwangju. I think it finished just yesterday. And their outcome document said that they want to make the Asia Culture Center in Gwangju as one of the hubs for cultural exchange between ASEAN and Korea. And I think that's a good sign. So, we have one in Seoul, one in Busan, one in Gwangju, 3 different centers, but doing similar work, not the same work, but similar work. And we can definitely promote exchanges at the people-to-people level. I had mentioned something about ASEAN identity earlier. I just want to bring this point back and say, at the ASEAN-Korea Centre, what we did was, I actually mentioned this to my ASEAN colleagues yesterday when they visited the center. But what we have done is we brought together the student associations of 10 different Southeast Asian countries under the ASEAN umbrella in Korea. So it's called the ASEAN Youth Network in Korea, AYNK. It was established in 2014 on the occasion of our 25th anniversary, 5 years ago. And since then, this has been a very instrumental. It it has been very instrumental in promoting exchanges among the youth of Korea and ASEAN. So currently we have about 200 to 300 students registered under the AYNK. And how this network was useful was, for example, last year and this year, President Moon visited all 10 ASEAN countries. And before he made these visits, the First Lady invited the ASEAN students studying in Korea to the Blue House, and she had a tea time to listen to their voices about what they think about the future of ASEAN and Korea partnership. And the students who actually took part in that visit program were the AYNK students. So I think Yeah. So I think by giving these students an ASEAN identity, in addition to their identity as a Thai, a Filipino, and so on, giving these students an identity, they now have a greater voice, and they also have a greater profile in Korea. Because it was so successful, this year we launched the Council of ASEAN Professors in Korea, called CAPK. Currently, we have about 60 registered professors. I was surprised to find out there were so many Southeast Asian professors actually teaching in Korea. They're all over the country, but they're teaching in Korea. So we are hoping to engage with them more next year for public diplomacy purposes, both here and in ASEAN cities as well. So as the only international, we pride ourselves as the only international organization dedicated to promoting ASEAN-Korea relations. So our center, it's our 10th year. We were established back in 2009 when we were celebrating our 20th anniversary. And I think we've played a significant role in enhancing connectivity, especially among the peoples of ASEAN and Korea. So we're not an organization that does policy work, but we're an organization that implements policy. So we base our work on the plan of action that the ASEAN and Korea have agreed on, and try to implement to realize the policy goals that has been set. Back in 2017, the center organized a survey on the perceptions of ASEAN and Korea youth. It was very encouraging to see the growing interest of the ASEAN among the Korean youth and their positive outlook into the future partnership. At the same time, at that time, the survey was limited to the Korean students and the ASEAN students studying in Korea, but I would love to do a future study of getting a more comprehensive view if we carried out like similar surveys throughout Korea and ASEAN 10. You just mentioned about a survey about, the trust level that the Filipinos have on Korea. I think a comprehensive survey throughout the 10 countries would be very interesting. Also, there are currently, actually, in addition to our center, there are, in fact, many activities, programs, projects that are taking place between Korea and ASEAN. But sometimes we lose opportunity in making the most of them. Somebody had mentioned about effectiveness, but it's something that we really need to promote because we're not really fully aware of all the activities that are taking place. So I think it's high time that we have a collected data of all the programs to more effectively promote the exchanges between Korea and ASEAN. So in closing, I just want to mention one project that we did just last week. Last week, as a side event of the 2019 ASEAN-ROK Commemorative Summit, our center organized what we call the ASEAN-Korea Train. We invited some 200 people from ASEAN and Korea that included government, businesses, artists, journalists, youth, and multicultural families. What we did was we took them literally on a train journey, visiting various corners of Korea and sharing the vision of a future community of ASEAN and Korea centered on our peoples. Now, the journey was a great success. Some of you already saw the video that I showed you yesterday at the center. The success of the journey was not because the program was well organized, but because it focused on the people, what they could share, the music and the art, and it helped them better understand about our partnership, and it showed to them the synergy that could happen when we work together. And lastly, I think the success was because we did not stop at the 200 people. It wasn't just an event among the 200 people that were invited, but we invited quite a sizable number of media. So there were about 20 media from ASEAN and 10 media journalists from Korea who were on board the train. And we also invited YouTubers. So we also used the social media platform, and we reached out to the public. So as of today, I'm still counting, but there have been over 200 media coverage on both Korea and ASEAN. And also, if I add the social media coverage, I think I'm over beyond the 500 lines. So, public diplomacy is an important and integral part of our way forward to link and connect our peoples based on deeper understanding and greater interest, and above all, passion for each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hejin. You touched on several issues which are very important, especially talk about your president's say in Jakarta that not only traded goods, but Korea should move with ASEAN, technology, culture, and people with contacts. And you also mentioned about the number of tourists visiting Korea, and likewise Koreans to ASEAN, plus the ASEAN scholars. There are about 1,000 or so studying in Korea. But beyond that, I think we should have a deeper relationship, meaning that there should be two-way exchanges. Just as K-pop and K-culture is popular, we should also try to encourage ASEAN to come, ASEAN wave in Korea. And then you spoke about the education, which is also very important in public diplomacy, and your activities of the ASEAN-Korea Centre here in Seoul. I do recall that there was a meeting just recently between the Minister of Cultures in Gwangju and also the ASEAN train that you mentioned. Very, very important activities between ASEAN and Korea to understand each other better. With that, I would like to pass the mic to the next speaker, Mr. Termsak. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I would like to join all my colleagues in thanking the KNDA and Ministry of Foreign Affairs for organizing this very important first strategic dialogue. And I hope I will be invited for the next year dialogue. Well, I should like also to thank all the audience in this room for staying after lunch. Normally in an ASEAN seminar, after lunch, people run away. They had enough of ASEAN. But don't worry, Ms. Kim talked about the need to promote awareness. Even people in ASEAN countries, they don't know much about ASEAN. So we also face the same problem. Now, after so many speakers before me, I have to try harder to say something new to maintain your interest, because we have 3 more speakers in this panel. Well, let me start with a big complaint, which is quite new, I believe. Nobody complained yet. Well, increasingly in ASEAN countries, our new generation, boys and girls, they come to South Korea and they return, they look like Korean. So it's becoming our identity crisis that our young people wanted, or now they look more and more like Korean. Now we try to remember how the Thai girl really looked like in the past. That's my big complaint. Well, next, Southern policy, you list people, prosperity, and peace. In ASEAN, we had the other way around. We started by putting first peace and security, because in our region, we have security problem. We had wars. So we need to maintain peace. We must stop all wars. Then we have peaceful foundation for prosperity, economic cooperation. And that is the benefit leading to the people. And now we are on the same page with South Korea. You also put people first. ASEAN is building a community for our people. And by the way, our population is 660 million, not 6 billion in the morning. So it's very important now that we all focus on bringing benefits of our community building and now ASEAN-Korea cooperation for the people on both sides. I think that's very important. Very important because friendship among people will last for generations, whereas military alliance come and go. Government can change their mind, change their strategy. Leader can switch off and go home. But people, once they have developed friendship, mutual understanding, they will pass on to the next generation. And I think this is very important. This is our foundation for our friendship and cooperation. And that's why it's very important that we have this panel to talk about people-to-people contact and cooperation. Another P that we are facing that nobody mentioned yet is populism. I will talk about this later on, and where ROK can help ASEAN to overcome populism. Well, the next thing that I should like to say is, what are the niche for the ROK to advance engagement partnership with ASEAN? Well, you have gone through many problems, overcome many problems that many ASEAN countries are still facing. And therefore, ASEAN countries can learn from ROK. I'll mention a few. Now we are talking about entering the digital economy, the fourth industrial revolution, robot with artificial intelligence, cash-free society. It's not cashless. If you have cashless, you don't have money, you cannot spend. I would rather say it's cash-free. We don't use cash society, how we are conducting our purchase and consumption in the new digital economy. That's one. I think ROK has much more advanced ICT technology to share, to help us in capacity building. I think that is one area that can be looked into. Certainly, the many workers working in Korea right now, I think they can learn a lot on the job training. I think that should be encouraged and promoted. And South Korea already facing aging society. In ASEAN, Singapore already facing aging society. My country, Thailand, is already coming to the aging society, and there'll be more. So we want to learn from South Korea how you are overcoming this problem. Yesterday, I went into a duty-free shop and found so many cosmetics. And one of the brands is called Forever Young. So I think that is a new aspiration of the young generation. They want to stay young. They don't want to grow old because they can see their parents are struggling. Their grandparents at home are suffering from old age. So they want to stay forever young, but that is not possible. So how to overcome that problem, I think we can learn from Korea. Maybe we can learn the secret of your Korean cosmetics. How to use a snail, how to use the egg for the face. I was surprised that you can use so many different things to stay young. And then another issue that had been mentioned several times is the Mekong sub-region. I should like to say that it's already overcrowded in that sub-region. The Japanese went in, the Australian went in, the Indian also there, the American came and a big news about it. That's why the Chinese woke up and then started something bigger. What can Korea do in sub-region in the Mekong? I think that is a big challenge. By the way, only 5 countries in ASEAN are in the sub-region. You need to think about something else for the others ASEAN countries that are not in the Mekong sub-region. And I should like to suggest strongly to look into this. Using your experience, how did you overcome the middle income trap? Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, even Vietnam, they all hope to escape from that middle income trap. They can learn from ROK. I think this is something that you should add so that you can do both for the Mekong countries and also the middle income country in ASEAN who want to escape and become developed society, developed economy. So that's something very important. Next, another thing that we heard so much this morning about the soft power, and I can confirm that there is no negative feeling, no anti-Korea feeling, sentiment, negative sentiment against Korea in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN. I think we all admire the Korean people for their hard working, their hard drinking also sometimes. I think something that we admire, you very tenacious, you want to overcome problem, you want to be better than your neighbor. I think that's very important. But there are many other things that have not been mentioned. I think someone mentioned Taekwondo. Sport is something that is capturing the young generation. And now they are even moving into e-sports. I think this is something Korean can help, can work together. Very fertile ground to capture the imagination of the young generation, e-sport, and also the normal, conventional sport. I think that's very important, something to look into. You just ask yourself why Korea has been very successful in promoting Taekwondo, not only in Southeast Asia, but the whole world. But China cannot sell the Kung Fu. Japan is not doing well in Judo or Jiu-Jitsu. But Korea succeeds in promoting Taekwondo as a world sport because we admire the Korean. There is no anti-Korean sentiment. I think it's very important to bear in mind. One more minute, okay. Another thing that nobody mentioned, this is something not soft but very hard. Nuclear power plant technology. Some of us in ASEAN, we are short of power supply. Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, even Philippines. Sooner or later, they may have to look for nuclear power. Korea has very good, very safe nuclear power plant technology. This is something that you can also share with ASEAN countries that need it. And lastly, somebody mentioned Xi Jinping, saying that problems in Asia should be handled by Asian. I should like to remind Chinese who quote him that without the American in the Pacific War, we will be all speaking Japanese right now, right? Who will win and stay the hegemon in Asia Pacific? You know the answer. I'll just end here, and I thank for your kind attention, and I hope you can support our Korea-ASEAN cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tap. You had especially talked about ASEAN to learn from the Korean experience, especially because they are very much advanced in the ICT, the digital economy, and also what Korea is doing in terms of the aging society. Because some of the countries like Singapore and Thailand are now going towards that aging society. And to compensate for countries not belonging to the Mekong, you said Korea should share something about how to overcome the middle income trap, like Vietnam and Philippines, like they want to become developed countries. And the other one is that ASEAN does not have any negative sentiments against Korea, which is very, very good, positive between ASEAN and Korea, and also to disseminate about the e-sport. And lastly, but this nuclear power supply which ASEAN needs very much, ASEAN countries need very much at this moment. Thank you, sir. And next, I would call on Carole Ann Chit Tha, but we are running out of time, so I would like to speed up. So maybe you can cut down to about 6 minutes. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm afraid I can't because I have so many facts.
Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
You can tell her she worked for you.
Good evening, everybody, and Menglaba. It is my pleasure and a great honor to be here today for ASEAN-ROK Think Tank Strategic Dialogue, which signifies the importance of partnership between ASEAN and ROK. So it is a good time now to have this event, as ROK will be having a landmark diplomatic event, 2019 ASEAN-ROK Commemorative Summit, to be held on 25th, 30th November in Busan, that aims at furthering and deepening the ASEAN-ROK strategic partnership. historically, Republic of Korea and ASEAN, one a country, the other a regional organization, have had contact and interactions. From the perspective of international relations and politics, the fundamental reason for Greater Korea-Southeast Asia relations arises from small player looking for a role in the geopolitics of the region. Politically, ROK has also been actively taking part in the regionalism of ASEAN, particularly in the expanded framework that emerged once the Cold War was tottering towards the end. Sharing similar geopolitical landscape, ASEAN and ROK has rapidly increased the level of bilateral cooperations in a wide range of areas since the development of sectorial dialogue partnership in 1989. By 1991, ROK was accorded a full dialogue partner by ASEAN. The partnership was elevated to a summit level in 1997. And the ROK acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, TAC, in Southeast Asia in 2004, and the partnership between ASEAN and the ROK has seen great progress and relations were elevated to a strategic partnership in 2010, committed to further strengthening and deepening multifaceted collaboration. There are many uncertainties arising in our international community. Amid such unpredictable events, there is growing attention and emphasis on the importance of ASEAN-ROK relations. To further deepen the partnership, there are queries that arise. How has the partnership developed over the past years, and what more should be done? What are the obstacles in the way, and what will be the advantages to move the ASEAN-ROK relations forward? The ROK ties with ASEAN was in fact stronger than some of the ties among Southeast Asian countries. The ASEAN community has been built upon the 3 pillars, and there is a large space for ROK to interact with ASEAN countries and choose any of the 3 pillars. Without a strong socio-cultural space or pillar, the political security community and the economic community will be built on a shaky foundation. Building the socio-cultural pillar, the people of ASEAN have their spaces, and for ROK, it was an entry point to ASEAN community building, which was very useful, effective, and beneficial cooperation for ASEAN-ROK relations, especially for public diplomacy. The new Southern policy has been built up upon the 3 peace pillars, people, prosperity, and peace, that aims to substantially elevate partnership between ASEAN and ROK to a higher level and correspond with the 3 pillars of ASEAN community to further deepen the strategic partnership with people placed at the center of the policy. The 2 sides reaffirmed that both ASEAN and ROK are seeking a people-centered community and agreed to work together in increasing people-to-people exchanges to connect the hearts of the peoples of ASEAN and ROK in building capacity for future generations. And to narrow the development gap and enhance connectivity among the ASEAN countries, it is essential to build a genuinely co-prosperous community. The ROK government's substantive cooperation projects, such as increased development cooperation with ASEAN, support of the Master Plan of ASEAN Connectivity 2025, the joining of the ASEAN Smart Cities Network, the conclusion of the ASEAN-ROK Air Services Agreement, and assistance to small and medium-sized enterprises in ASEAN countries can be noted and enhance the connectivity among the ASEAN countries. For a sustainable partnership between ASEAN and ROK, it is important to build a strong foundation of socio-cultural cooperation. This kind of cooperation takes place mostly at the people level, and therefore it is in line with ASEAN's effort to build a people-centered and people-oriented ASEAN. ROK's interest in Southeast Asia and ASEAN is far from new. Even before President Moon came to office, his predecessors has also got better with the region. President Moon took the unprecedented step of sending a special envoy to ASEAN and recognizing ASEAN as the second important region to Korea and the immediate neighbors. The people of ROK and Southeast Asia must see themselves culturally fellow ASEANs if the new Asia is to take place at the table of the great powers. Public diplomacy can be a building block for ROK and ASEAN. Public diplomacy is a new and expanding field. It is the public interaction dimension of diplomacy, a mechanism which nations foster mutual trust and productive relationships, and it has become crucial to building a secure global environment. It has been widely seen as a transparent means by which a sovereign country communicates with publics in other countries. The 21st century public diplomacy goes beyond bilateral and multilateral diplomacy and construct and conduct relations with new global actors. Public diplomacy has emerged as a significant style of diplomacy which refers to soft power diplomacy. Social dimension of community is vital and need not forget the people-to-people exchanges, the real issues that matters most to the people, their livelihood, the real security of the human. We need to bring people together, need to guide all peoples of ASEAN and ROK to get to know each other more, to accommodate and appreciate each other's culture more. So to deepen friendship and understanding among peoples of ASEAN and ROK, we need not leave out the role of ASEAN-Korea Centre. The Centre plays a pivotal role to invigorate tourism and enrich cultural exchanges between ASEAN and ROK. And this center has been implementing a series of programs under the collective theme of connecting people, sharing prosperity. And these programs focus on the 4 key elements of people-centered community building, people-to-people exchanges, sustainable development, and prosperity and Industry 4.0. There are cooperations projects initiated by ASEAN member states, and the ROK led the program-based approach of the new ASEAN-ROK cooperation framework focused on 3 focal, that is education, culture, and environment. And we also witness ASEAN and ROK cooperation through the ASEAN Culture House established in Busan. Culture makes people understand each other better and easier to overcome the economic and political barriers. It is important to maintain culture and even network between different cultures, which will lead to understand each other better. Even in the diplomatic cause, culture is crucial to bridge a stage to another. The history, impact, and potentials of the Korean wave as a positive enabler of Korean culture in ASEAN nations has been capturing the hearts and minds of many in ASEAN. In Korea, soap operas and movies, Southeast Asians associate themselves with the Asian ethos and transcends language and affirms the shared family values. It is important that ASEAN and ROK enhance cooperation in response to climate change, which supplement activities under the ASEAN Action Plan on Joint Response to Climate Change of the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, including seeking ways to cooperate with Global Green Growth Institute and Green Climate Fund, and sharing ideas and promoting development on climate change. ASEAN and ROK have competitive advantages with regard to their relations with each other, and there are many opportunities and foreseeable benefits for both sides. At the same time, there are challenges, but to overcome these challenges, we must realize the opportunities and transform challenges into opportunities on the basis of its public diplomacy mechanism. Sandwiched between continental and maritime powers, ASEAN and ROK share diverse geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geocultural imperatives in coping with the challenges and opportunities of globalization and regionalization. Despite initiatives made from the ROK's point of view, public diplomacy has some limitations. Public awareness on public diplomacy is low, and peoples do not understand its importance. So there are no strategies formulated and allocate resources across multiple functions, led to waste and inefficiency. From the part of ASEAN, there are challenges in building ASEAN community, people's ASEAN for the future. We need to assess how connected is ASEAN with the peoples and attempts it makes to ensure such connectivity and closeness. What are the state of awareness, attitudes, understanding, and commitment towards ASEAN among the peoples of the region and beyond? How to bridge the gap, how to link hearts and open up the minds of the peoples of various classes and background towards ASEAN. We need to assess where is a conception of community between ASEAN and its partners like ROK? The answer is there is no such conception of community, but what has been built is a dialogue of a forum to deliberate on areas of cooperation for mutual benefit. A sense of community really emerges when it becomes more integrated, more connected than realized and aware of. ASEAN and ROK have competitive advantages, and if properly identified and driven, would help not just boosting their relations, but also boosting in further regionalism and peace in East Asia. It is important to seize the opportunity, overcome the challenges, and go forward on the positive momentum to bring ASEAN-ROK relations to the next high level, move into a new era of development and progress in the broader prospects and vast potentials to be harnessed together. We need to open up new and broader space for public diplomacy and pave the way for collective wisdom, will, and capacity to manage differences and diversities, as well as mutual beneficial cooperation. There are surely many challenges and opportunities lying ahead. Effective public diplomacy requires the understanding and cooperation of elements of society by instilling in them appreciation of culture diversity. There is a greater need to cooperate with think tanks, various classes, and civil societies. Although there are difficulties and hurdles, its rich supply of soft power assets will equip it for a successful journey. But to conquer or to be conquered is the question we are left with to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will refrain from giving a summary because we have two more speakers and the time is already up. So, Mr. Somvilay Chanthavong, you have the floor, sir.
So thank you, Mr. Moderators. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Korea and also as well as the Korean National Diplomatic Academy for the warm welcome, hospitality, and excellent arrangement to make this dialogue happen. And I also do agree with other panelists that mentioned on the ASEAN-ROK cooperation that we have witnessed a number of significant achievements in ASEAN-ROK cooperation in the past 30 years. And ROK also has actively participated and also contributed to the ASEAN development through not only through the multilateral but also bilateral cooperation as well. But today, due to the time limitation, I would like to emphasize and also touch upon the social-cultural cooperation, as the ASEAN and ROK have emphasized and also pay more attention on this area in order to deepen friendship and also understanding among their people. So I observed that several activities and projects have been undertaken to enhance people-to-people exchange between the two sides, including annual programs such as the ASEAN-ROK Film Leaders Program, ASEAN-ROK Youth Exchange Program, and others. And in the cooperation of the education is another part that have been or have remarkable progress. The ROK has convened several training courses, not only for the government official, not only for the students, but also to the students from the ASEAN, also from the ROK, in order to learn and also for knowledge sharing, among others. And furthermore, the ROK also provided funding for the ASEAN-ROK scholarship for Korean study program to the ASEAN students by coordinating with the ASEAN University Network. This is a very important and also I think it's very good example that we should continue. Moreover, ROK and CLMV countries, including the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, also have agreed to establish the e-learning center in their own university or in our home university. And I think that this is a good channel for the student, not only for the ASEAN, but also for the Korean student to learn and for the Korean, for the knowledge sharing among each other. Furthermore, The ASEAN and ROK have also co-organized various training to the youth development and also cultural exchange. And as well as we know that this year, 2019, marked the 30th anniversary of the ASEAN-ROK dialogue relation. And the Korean government temporarily waived the visa application fee to the ASEAN citizens for 3 months, start from this month, October, to the end of December 2019. And I really appreciate on this. And this can be a good model for the public awareness and also to enhance and strengthen the people-to-people exchange among the ASEAN people and the Korean people in order to learn and to explore more and keep awareness, raise the awareness on the ASEAN and also ROK cooperation. Even though the ASEAN-ROK have reached various achievements and opportunity, but regional peace, security, poverty eradication, and development gap still remain challenges for enhancing people-centered cooperation. So in order to tackle with these challenges, I would like to share some recommendations as follows. The first one is ROK has become and remain one of the ASEAN largest trading and investment partner. Therefore, people-to-people exchange are playing a significant role in building the mutual trust, depending mutual understanding between the people. As such, we should further strengthen this momentum. Secondly, both ASEAN and ROK should continue promoting the ASEAN-ROK strategy partnership through implementing the ASEAN-ROK action plan, and particularly in the social and cultural area. And in my point of view, I think that the network of ASEAN-ROK think tanks should be established and strengthened as an important track-through platform to provide productive recommendations to the ASEAN-ROK government, like we have done, like we are doing today. And I'm hopefully that this is not only the first, but it should be continued and frequently organized. And not only the think tank, several working group or seminars should be organized as well in order to share information with each other. And we need to seek or explore more the possibility to enhance intelligence exchange, information sharing, or mutual interest topic. Besides this, the human resource development and capacity building in the region should be addressed by increasing more assistance and support in this area, and particularly to the least developed countries of ASEAN member countries, in order for them to have well participate and contribute effectively to the cooperation development task. So for the human resources development, I think that the Korean government or even the Korean private sector or even Korean universities should work closely with the ASEAN University Network, because the ASEAN University Network is one of the international government organizations that have a main role and play an active role in the education training or even provide scholarship for the ASEAN students. And I strongly believe that some of ASEAN students here also benefit from this program. And besides this, we also need to improve the collaboration system, particularly the cooperation mechanism, supervision, or even assessment unit, in order to facilitate the people-to-people exchange more successfully. And we should disseminate information on ASEAN-ROK more effectively to all segments of the society, not only for the government official or business area, but the general people also should have a awareness on this area. And besides this, the public-private partnership also should be promoted, while the private sector among ROK and ASEAN countries can actively contribute towards the promotion of the people-to-people exchange, improve the infrastructure, and others. In conclusion, I think that the promotion of the The public diplomacy as well as the people-to-people exchange is not a duty of one person or even for the ASEAN only or ROK, but it is the responsibility of all people, all segments in the society need to contribute on this area. So thank you so much. That's all for my presentation.
Thank you very much. The last speaker will be Professor CHO Wondeuk. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion regarding the people-to-people exchange. Given the limited time, I will skip the thank you message to ASEAN friends, ASEAN participants. And as usual, the last speaker has nothing to tell a lot. So, but helpfully and thankfully, the Director General, Ms. Kim's well explained Korea-ASEAN cultural relationship and people-to-people exchanges. So I will skip that kind of the explanations and discussions. I will straightforwardly pointing out very specific issues regarding the people-to-people exchanges between the ASEAN and Korea. One of the objectives of this strategic dialogue is that how Korea and ASEAN deal with the U.S.-China competition and also find a way to cooperate in this dynamic, changing international world. So we need to, in order to us to do this, we need to human resources. As the Director General mentioned before, we have a small ASEAN communities in professional community in Korea. And I think that in the same situation in ASEAN countries. The reason is that actually previously we didn't have much interest in ASEAN. And also the ASEAN countries had not much strong interest in Korea too. So, and therefore we don't have a vast pool of the experts on Korea and ASEAN. So that is a challenge for improve the Korea and ASEAN relations in the dimension of politics and securities. In order for that, we need to utilize, we need to make that kind of resource with ASEAN students who are studying now in Korea. Here we have a number of the ASEAN students who are now studying in the universities, especially with regard to international studies and Korean studies. So in that regard, I would like to suggest that actually Korean diplomatic, National Diplomatic Academy have some institutionalization of the public diplomacy. We have a variety of education programs such as government, public and private sector training programs and programs for foreign diplomats in Korea and training programs for diplomats from developing countries, training programs for foreign diplomats invited by Korea Foundation and diplomatic workshop for college students in Korea for a week. And I personally make a suggestion that we need to have some kind of venue, provide a venue for both Korean students and ASEAN students get together in discussing politics and security and how to look at the current international situations. So we need to some small programs for both Korean students and ASEAN students to get us together. And so at the end of the day, ASEAN students will go back to their countries and they will become the experts on Korea. At the same time, Korean students have some kind of the enthusiasm to study ASEAN, and so definitely they will become the Korean experts on ASEAN. So that's my brief and quick suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good point that you have, to have ASEAN students and Korean students here at the Academy and let them exchange about the current affairs of the world. So I think it's a very good point. But we have run out of time very seriously. We are late by 15 minutes. So if you like to forfeit your tea break, then we can have Q&A. Otherwise, we have to end here. So may I have a suggestion from the floor? Do you want to continue with the Q&A and forfeit the tea break? Or you want to have rest now? Total silence, that means you want to break. So we'll have a tea break. Thank you very much. Please thank the panelists.